Good morning again. My name is Ann Huelis, and I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Management Study. I'm going to be one of your hosts for today, and I'm also joined online by my colleague, Cherie Price, who's going to come off of mute and introduce herself. Go ahead, Cherie.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Excited to be here today. As Ann said, my name is Cherie Price. I'm the senior planner on the study, and I work in our Regional Planning and Environment Division South Office at the New Orleans District, and look forward to providing you part of the briefing today.
Great. And thank you, Cherie. We're also joined by several of our colleagues from across the Army Corps of Engineers. We have folks from the New Orleans District, Vicksburg, Memphis, St. Louis, Mobile, and Little Rock districts, as well as our Engineering Research and Development Center, ERDIC, and our Mississippi Valley Division. So this is a regional effort being led by multiple districts across the Army Corps of Engineers. I'd also like to acknowledge some of our state partnering group members who have also joined us today. I see that we have Mr. Chris Wells online from Mississippi and Mr. Jesse Tinch representing Illinois. Okay, and we're excited to create this space to update you and appreciate you all taking time out of your day to join us. Our intent is to hold one of these meetings every 3 months to give you regular updates of where we are in the study and to give you an opportunity to ask questions or voice any concerns that you may have. We are going to have a short questionnaire at the end of this meeting. It's only 5 questions and 4 of them are multiple choice, so it should go pretty quick. So I would ask that you fill out that questionnaire at the end, and really that's to help us make the best use of this time with you all, right? So we'll take that feedback that we get from you today and use that to update and make improvements on how we conduct these updates in the future. Okay, so before I get started, I'd like to cover just a few logistics for the meeting. All of your microphones have been muted, but once we finish the presentation, you are welcome to come off of mute. And there's a few different ways that you can either come off of mute or leave comments. So if you're not familiar with the WebEx tool, I'm just going to walk you through that now so that you know how to use this at the end of the presentation. So first, you should see a chat function in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you click that button, another window will pop up on the right-hand side. You simply enter your comment in that box and press enter. And so I'd like to ask everybody to go ahead and try to use that feature now. So if you could go ahead and put your name and your affiliation, and if you would like to receive emails from us on the study, you can go ahead and put your email address in there as well. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can also send us an email at lmrcomp@usace.army.mil with your contact information, and I'll have that email up in a second. So that's one way that you can leave a comment or ask a question during today's meeting. When we get to the end of the presentation, you can also come off of mute. And so the way to do that is on the bottom of your screen. You should see the unmute button, and you should also see the little hand icon. So just to help us manage the number of people who may want to give comment today, we would ask that you first raise your hand. So again, you would just click the little raise your hand button. A little icon will pop up on the screen. And Mr. Matt Rowe, who is helping facilitate the meeting today, he will call on individuals in the order that he sees the hands are raised. And then once your name is called, you can come off and mute. And then finally, you can also simply email us. If you think of something after the meeting, or maybe you're not comfortable sharing it during the meeting forum itself, please do send us an email with your questions and any comments that you have. This is our email address, and we would ask that in the subject line, you reference the quarterly public update. Also want to acknowledge, I've seen a few more folks join since we started. Appreciate Ms. Pat Hemphill, our Vicksburg district leadership for joining today. Thank you, Ms. Pat. Okay, and with that, let's go ahead and get into the agenda. So we're going to provide an overview of the study today. I know some of you may have participated in previous meetings, but also recognize that there's a few new faces on as well. Cherie is going to walk us through where we are in the study process and what we've accomplished to date. And then we're going to spend the majority of the meeting talking about what we heard during the public scoping period, both during the meetings itself and in the comments we've received after the fact. Cherie is then going to walk us through where we're headed and how we're going to use those comments to inform the study process. And then we're going to open it up to comments and any questions, and we can stay on for as long as we need to answer any questions folks have and to hear your comments today. And again, we're going to ask for your feedback on this webinar. So there's going to be a questionnaire at the end. Again, it's only 5 questions. Should take no more than 30 seconds or so to fill that out. And that will help us make these webinars more valuable and useful to you in the future. Okay, so why are we studying the Mississippi River? Congress authorized the Lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Management Study in Section 213 of the Water Resources Development Act of 2020. And in this authority, the Corps is directed to conduct a comprehensive study of the Lower Mississippi River Basin from Cape Girardeau, Missouri to the Gulf of Mexico. The study will identify actionable recommendation for the comprehensive management of the basin for multiple purposes, including hurricane and storm damage risk reduction, flood risk management, structural and non-structural flood control, floodplain management strategies, navigation, ecosystem restoration, water supply, hydropower, recreation, and any other purposes as determined by the Secretary of the Army. So this study is a unique and historic opportunity to improve the management of the Mississippi River and tributary system in an adaptable, resilient, and sustainable river. The Mississippi River provides tremendous value to the nation economically and ecologically. It gathers water from 41% of the continental United States, including 31 states. The basin is home to over 59 endangered birds, reptiles, mammals, and other species, and it also provides designated critical habitat for many of those species. There are 44 national wildlife refuges comprising more than 100,000 acres of native wildlife habitat. Within the basin is the Army Corps' Mississippi River and Tributaries Project, or MR&T. Authorized in 1928, the MR&T project is a system of levees and floodwalls, tributary basin improvements, floodways, and channel improvement stabilization that work together to provide flood risk management and navigation while fostering environmental protection and enhancement. So a key component of this Lower Mississippi River comprehensive study will be to examine the performance of this MR&T system and determine if improvements or adjustments are needed in response to changing conditions in the river itself and in the surrounding environment. So some of the outcomes that could result from this study are listed here. So that could include recommendations for constructing new projects or modifying either structurally or operationally existing projects, monitoring of or adaptive management for existing projects to respond to changing climate conditions, improving the efficiency of operational and maintenance dredging within the study area, whether changes are necessary to the MR&T project within the study area, other federal and non-federal actions, and any follow-up studies and data collection and monitoring that would be carried out by the relevant federal or state agency. So there is a diverse set of outcomes that this study will result in. The map on the left is our proposed boundary area for the study. It includes the portions of 7 states and 6 U.S. Army Corps of Engineers districts, and encompasses the Mississippi River and Tributaries Project, as well as the subbasins that were identified in the study authority, which includes Mississippi Sound Estuary, the Lake Pontchartrain Basin, Breton Sound, Barataria Basin, and the Atchafalaya Basin. I'm now going to hand it over to Cherie to walk you through the study process.
All right, so just a little bit of background on the planning process for those that are not familiar. The Corps uses a risk-informed decision-making smart planning process that includes 6 steps as part of planning. And the left side here, you see the feasibility study process outlined. And these are the major milestones that we use as part of the 6-step process to go back to our vertical chain, to our leadership at key points in the study to ensure that we're moving along in a policy compliant manner and that we have buy-in throughout the agency. And on the right side, you can see the National Environmental Policy Act process, which the Corps is required to do anytime we take an action. If we're going to build something, anything that can affect the environment or have an impact in the environment in any way. And so that NEPA process is integrated into the feasibility study process. Next slide. So you can see at the top with the yellow box that this is where we are in the study. We are early in our scoping process, and we are moving towards alternative formulation and analysis. And so we've taken the feedback that we've heard. Some was very detailed and specific, and some was more conceptual. And so the conceptual information we're taking and adding detail to it and adding it to the landscape. And so that also resulted, the public feedback that we received resulted in measures and in some cases alternatives. And so we're currently working through that information as part of alternative formulation and analysis. So you can see below on the feasibility study process side, we've completed the alternative milestone meeting, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a couple of slides. And on the NEPA side, we've identified the need for action, and we've started our early scoping process. So we did close out the early scoping comment period on April 2nd. And that was primarily because it's important for us to get that information early in the study to inform the plan formulation process. But that does not mean that the public cannot still provide feedback throughout the study. Next slide. So we've conducted a public orientation meeting back in January 23rd, 2024. That kind of kicked off our public meeting process. And so after that, we had 32 public meetings. You can see on the map on the right that those starred locations are where we held those public meetings. And those occurred from February to March of 2024 in 15 cities across 7 states. And we had about 410 participants in total. We've also conducted 3 virtual meetings with 50 participants participating in those, and also had some tribal nations meetings in April and May of this year. Next slide. Okay, so as part of the alternative milestone meeting that we had with our vertical chain, we go into that meeting showing them where we are with our scoping process, laying out where we are in the plan formulation process, and also identifying our next steps to get to the next major milestone, which is a tentatively selected plan milestone. So as part of that briefing, we provide the problems and opportunities for the study, the study objectives. We talk about the future without the project for the study. So if there's no federal action, what does the future look like on the Mississippi River? And again, we talk about our scoping and start to talk about the measures and the alternative plans for the study. And so it was important for us also in that meeting to convey to our vertical chain and leadership the feedback that we've been hearing from the public. Next slide. So planning is an iterative process. We continue to add detail as we move throughout the study. As I said earlier, the information that we've received helped us identify what issues do we really need to focus on in the Mississippi River. Internal to our agency, we have an idea of what we think the problems are, but that can be a limited outlook on what we need to focus on. So it was important for us to see state by state, region by region, what you guys are thinking are the problems on the river, and to go back and check those initial assumptions that we made and make modifications to that. In addition, we may have identified some problems that are not considered to be problems in other areas. So all of that information is critical, and we will continue to refine that data as we proceed throughout the study. We'll continue to come back to you all through our quarterly updates. And if we need to go back at some point in the beginning of the process and add something in that might have been removed, if we learn something that later that was critical information, we have the ability to do that. We'll continuously refine the study scope, and with the additional information that we get throughout this study, we'll clarify the risks and uncertainties in the study. Next slide.
Okay, thanks so much, Cherie, for running us through the study process and documenting where we've been to date. So now we're going to segue into what we heard during the scoping period. So just as a little bit of background here. So So what we aim to do in the following slides is summarize the comments, and we did so by bucketing them into different themes. Not every comment can be depicted on the slides. However, the themes are intended to illustrate the diversity of comments across the study area. Any language or characterizations in the comments reflect the views of the commenters and not necessarily the views of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And all public scoping comments will be posted on the study website and will be included as an appendix to this public scoping report. So everything that we're sharing with you today will be a part of the public scoping report that will come out in July. And all public scoping comments have been reviewed by the study team and will be in use to inform the scope of the study, as Cherie just spoke to. So first, we reviewed every comment that we received and then grouped the comments together into different themes that you see here on the screen. The themes on the left closely match our study purposes, which include flood risk management, navigation, ecosystem restoration, water supply, and recreation. But there were also comments that were related to how we are conducting the study. And so we developed additional themes to capture those comments, including socioeconomic and environmental justice, climate change, study objectives and approach, the scope of analysis, public and agency involvement, impact analysis methodologies, and mitigation and adaptive management. So within each of these buckets or themes, we then summarize the comments. I know there's a lot of text here on the screen, and I'm not going to read through all of this today. All of this information you see here will be in our public scoping report that we plan to publish in July. And we're also going to post this presentation on our website after the meeting if you want to review these summaries more closely. But we are going to take some time and zoom in to those on the left and share, again, a summary of some of these comments. So we received approximately 200 individual comments. This is just kind of a high-level summary of those. As you can see, about 33% of them were related to either coastal storm or riverine flooding, including the management of structures and levees. 31% related to ecosystem restoration and wildlife habitat, 26% navigation, and so on and so forth. The majority of the comments came from the Louisiana area, as well as Mississippi. But about 27% of commenters did not provide their location. Okay, so now we're going to go through each of those themes that were shown on the left-hand side of the previous slide. So comments related to flood risk management, including updating operation manuals based on current conditions and climate change projections, modifying or constructing flood risk management infrastructure, such as levees, structures, and pump stations, managing sedimentation issues, and addressing development in floodplains. So across the study area, there were comments related to levees and floodways. This included comments such as focusing the study on finishing the authorized Mississippi River and Tributaries project and passing legislation for the U.S. Coast Guard or other enforcement authority to stop barges from getting too close to and damaging the levees when the river is high. Comments related to floodways included assessing the operation of floodways and backwaters so that they work together during a project design flood, as well as expanding the extent of floodways to reduce flood damages. Other comments included consideration of acquiring land to hold water in the upper basin to reduce flood stages downriver, or managing land development in flood hazard areas or along waterways, or providing assistance to landowners to participate in conservation programs. Focusing now on some of the comments that were location specific under this flood risk management category. In the northern portion of our study area, there were infrastructure comments such as upgrading damaged pumping stations and installing permanent pumps to avoid extreme flooding. There was also comments related to updating and revising water releases on the Illinois River. Working our way down the study area, there were comments related to fortifying Cairo, Illinois, and Hickman, Kentucky, so that the Birds Point, New Madrid spillway can overtop instead of requiring explosive action. Also maintaining current federal levee systems in Southeast Missouri because many reaches are grade deficient, but federal funding is not allocated for all the repairs required. Infrastructure comments near Drummond, Tennessee included constructing a partial levee or spur between the Mississippi River and Coon Valley Road to prevent high velocity flows from damaging prime farmlands, roads, businesses, and drainage infrastructure. Infrastructure comments related or near Vicksburg included finishing the pumps on Steel Bayou in Mississippi to protect crops, timber, and wildlife, and finishing the Yazoo Backwater Pumps project to provide flood protection for people, homes, businesses, and cropland, and also provide environmental benefits. In South Louisiana, flood risk management comments included both infrastructure recommendation as well as changes to operations of existing Mississippi River and tributaries project structures. For example, comments suggested increasing the capacity of the Wax Lake outlet, while others recommended examining the operation triggers at Morganza, Old River Control Complex, Bayou Cortable, and the Bonnie Carey Spillway. At the Morganza Spillway, it was recommended that the Corps revise the trigger operation to put more water down the Atchafalaya River to reduce sedimentation. At the Old River Control Complex, comments spoke to reconsidering the timing of the mandated 70-30 flow split at the complex. At Bayou Cortable, the comment spoke to revising the operations manual so that operations of the structure avoids flooding in Lafayette during storm events. And at Bonnie Carey, commenters asked that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers acknowledge and address the impacts caused by the Bonnie Carey to the Mississippi Sound. Moving on to some of the navigation comments. Comments regarding navigation focused on maintaining depths for barge traffic and addressing challenges such as low water levels, sedimentation, aging infrastructure, and updating navigation systems for extreme weather. There was a request for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to work with industry and the U.S. Coast Guard to maintain navigation lights crucial for navigation. In the northern portion of the lower Mississippi River, comments focused on deepening all channels to create natural storage of water during high water and to maintain the Mississippi River channel to authorized depths to optimize barge draft and maximize volumes. Comments related to the operation of structures included reevaluating constraints on releasing water from Lake Michigan to the Illinois River for navigation purposes, to update river operations across the U.S. Army Corps' district boundaries to maintain navigation during fall shipping seasons, to review the Kentucky and the Barkley Dam purposes for navigation during droughts, to utilize Lake Barkley to hold water and keep the Missouri River open, preventing shutdowns due to insufficient water management, collaborating with the Tennessee Valley Authority to control water levels downstream of Olmsted Lock to prevent sudden changes that hinder navigation, and to evaluate impacts on navigation when opening spillways such as the Morganza and Bonnie Carey. Comments related to modernizing structures included enhancing structures for extreme weather to prevent harbor closures during low water, to ensure the Tennessee Department of Transportation considers navigation concerns in the bridge design of the proposed I-55 bridge in Memphis, to modernize the Bayou Sorrel Lock in Louisiana, and to replace the Inner Harbor Navigation Canal Lock in Louisiana to improve flood protection and transportation efficiency. Comments related to dredging and sediment included dredging the main channels of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, regardless of drought and water levels, to dredge the intercoastal waterway at the Bayou Sorrel Lock, and to assess sediment levels in the Atchafalaya River. Navigation safety concerns included rejecting the proposed Delta Point project due to adverse impacts on vessel transit, addressing navigation challenges near Hickman Control Point because navigation is severely affected during low water. Route configuration comments included adding to the existing sandbar along the Mississippi River to replace the pilot town anchorage and enhancing river flow to reduce shoaling and sedimentation in the navigation channel. Creating a hopper dredge disposal area at the confluence of the Mississippi River and the uncontrolled Neptune Pass, and to move the federal channel along the Atchafalaya River in the vicinity of Stouts Pass to Little Island Pass to reduce maintenance dredging and support channel resilience. A variety of comments recommended various strategies for restoring floodplains, riparian habitats, and coastal areas across the entire study area. The comments emphasized the importance of integrated approaches to ecosystem restoration, floodplain management, and coastal protection to mitigate flood risks, preserve habitats, improve water quality, and enhance resilience against storms. Comments related to restoring floodplains and riparian habitats included incorporating the remaining 7 regions identified in the 2015 Lower Mississippi River Resource Assessment. It was suggested that the scope be narrowed for efficiency and to conserve or restore the rarest and most important habitats on the lower Mississippi River, such as oxbow lakes, meander scarps, and other high priority habitats. Reconnecting rivers to floodplains included removing or modifying targeted river training structures to reduce flood heights and restore important fish and wildlife habitat and reconnect side channels. To realign levee segments farther away from the river, and to integrate gray and green infrastructure. Restoring floodplain and riparian habitat also included enhancing and restoring natural vegetation. Comments included identifying opportunities for reforestation and other nature-based solutions to improve channel resilience, restoring wetland buffers on the riverside of the mainline levee system, preserving cypress swamp and bottomland hardwood habitats along the river from Little Rock to Memphis, addressing invasive species on the river to benefit native species, including privet abatement and kudzu control, leveraging the Batcher Reforestation Initiative started by the NRCS's partnership with the Mississippi River Trust and the LMRCC, and to restore native river cane. Comments related to enhancing aquatic channels included improving low flow conditions to benefit fish and wildlife, to restore flow through secondary channels via notching of dikes, to conduct aquatic habitat ecosystem restoration studies under existing congressional authorities, conducting an ecological survey of the islands on the Mississippi River to determine their uniqueness, ecological resources, and their opportunities for restoration, to improve in-river and side channel habitat to enhance flood protection while restoring habitat for fish and wildlife, and to implement projects authorized to address invasive species on the river. Comments related to restoring coastal habitats included sediment management in the Atchafalaya Basin, beneficial use of dredged material in Southeast Louisiana and Mississippi Sound, reviewing the operation of existing planned river diversions and flood control structures such as Morganza and Bonnet Carré to improve the integration of coastal ecosystem restoration and flood or drought mitigation, and to identify the adverse effects of Mississippi River discharges from both controlled and uncontrolled structures, and to implement wetland restoration in Plaquemines Parish. Comments pertaining to threatened and endangered species, including consideration of recovery actions for listed and proposed species, and proactive conservation measures for species to prevent future listings. Other commenters provided information about the importance of the study area for migratory birds and stated that approximately 60% of all North American bird species rely on the Mississippi River Basin habitats, including 40% of all waterfowl and shorebirds that migrate along the Mississippi River Flyway. Commenters also spoke to the need to review the operation of each National Wildlife Refuge pumping station to better consider the impacts that these operations have on fish and wildlife habitat, specifically in areas impacting National Wildlife Refuges. Consideration should be given to returning the Wapanaka Bayou back to a wildlife corridor between the Mississippi River and the Wapanaka National Wildlife Refuge. Comments related to water supply also included water quality concerns and largely focused on pollutants and hypoxia issues, availability and quality of water supply for agricultural and municipal uses, operational and structural modifications in South Louisiana to address saltwater intrusion. Comments related to contaminants, nutrient loading, and hypoxia included consideration of how municipal, industrial, and stormwater discharges affect water quality. Consider closing the road crossing the old river control structure to protect against hazardous cargo spillage. Stating that municipalities up and down the Mississippi River must work together to reduce the physical and liquid waste that enter the river via a Mississippi River-wide circular economy master plan. Acknowledge the effects of and find strategies to prevent nitrogen and phosphate pollution in the Mississippi Sound, and to manage the basin's nutrient loading and hypoxia through nature-based solutions and improved floodplain connectivity in the lower river. The scope should also consider the inputs from the Ohio and Missouri rivers. Groundwater recharge comments included recognizing the interconnectedness of surface water and groundwater in managing the Mississippi River and the impact of significant declines in aquifers throughout the Mississippi River Basin with withdrawals exceeding recharge rates. Adding weirs to our interior streams for water supply, groundwater, aquifer recharge, and channel maintenance. Comments related to water supply for agriculture included water from the Mississippi River should be used during the growing season to help offset areas throughout the Delta. Pumping water into Moon Lake, for example, in Mississippi and letting it travel down through the Delta would be ideal. Sugarcane farmers in Point Coupee Parish in Louisiana, between the Atchafalaya and the Mississippi rivers, rely on an efficient supply of water and drainage, and were asked to consider impacts to farmers when considering alternative management strategies, including decisions about the Morganza spillway. Enhancing the resiliency of municipal and drinking water supplies in coastal areas to saltwater intrusion and sediment was also a theme. Comments were specific to several coastal areas, including the Atchafalaya Basin, the Teche Vermilion Basin, and Southeast Louisiana. Commenters asked that we investigate subsidence and sea level rise contribution to saltwater intrusion, to collaborate with local government partners to implement operations and new technologies and facilities that would address the threat of saltwater intrusion and provide for reliable water supply, to collaborate with tribal nations to determine how to increase water flow in the Atchafalaya Basin to enhance drinking water supplies and water quality, to expedite repairs on the crevasses on the east side of the lower river in Plaquemines Parish, and to study solutions to protect municipal water supply, including a desalination facility that could serve the greater New Orleans region. Comments related to recreation and tourism included recommendations for enhancing various riverfronts in the study area, constructing walking, biking paths on levees, increasing the number of boat ramps and outfitter services along the lower river, and addressing sedimentation issues in the Atchafalaya Basin for recreational benefits. Some comments related to promoting safer and more accessible recreation, while also safeguarding the natural environment and supporting tourism and fisheries. Restoring riverfronts and channels to expand recreational opportunities, including improving the flows and conditions along Cape Girardeau riverfront to improve recreation, and to improve flows and conditions within the Wolf River in Memphis. Comments also suggested investigating the feasibility of implementing walking and biking paths on levees in the Mississippi River watershed, and that these trails could be paved or unpaved and require little maintenance, but are extremely popular where this infrastructure is currently in place. Establishing more boat ramp, outfitter, and guide services on the lower Mississippi River. This will help get river adventurers on the water safely to explore and enjoy, including solutions for avoiding impacts to and or restoring the Mississippi Sound for the benefit of fisheries and tourism, and addressing sediment in the Atchafalaya Basin that hinders vessel access to facilities, causes safety issues and traffic shutdowns in the river, and adversely impacts industry and recreation. A variety of comments were received that emphasized the need for a comprehensive collaborative approach that integrates ecological, water quality supply, flood control, recreation, and navigation objectives. Comments expressed the need for the study team to be objective, flexible, and not swayed by political pressures. Comments recommended that the study provide actionable solutions and address issues through nature-based solutions and improved floodplain connectivity, a cohesive strategy across the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer districts, and the creation of interdisciplinary action groups for each mission area was also recommended. And lastly, comments emphasized that a systematic approach is needed, considering that the river system as a whole, rather than focusing on individual projects. The public scoping report further elaborates on these additional themes, but I've briefly summarized some of them here. So comments included equitable project delivery and environmental justice, ensuring a comprehensive and transparent study process, implementing flexible and holistic management, collaborating with local entities and involving all ages and stakeholders, coordinating across the U.S. Army Corps districts, disciplines, and agencies, maintaining political independence and integrity, communicating information clearly and continuously, using advanced models and data, incorporating existing data and research, and coordinating with existing initiatives and experts. So I'm now going to hand it back to Cherie, and she's going to walk us through the next steps in the study process.
Great, thank you, Anne. So as we said previously, we've completed the alternatives milestone, and we're moving now towards identifying a tentatively selected plan on the feasibility study process side. On the NEPA side, we will begin to draft NEPA documentation, which is already in process. We've been writing up the existing conditions and the future without project conditions. We received about 400 measures from public scoping, and prior to public scoping, we had about 400 measures as well that we received from our charrettes and from our stakeholder engagement with NGOs and with others. And so part of our task, since we've conducted that initial public scoping, is to go through those 400 measures and compare it to the list that we had previously, to add in anything new that we received. So some of the comments and the measures that we received during scoping were already existing in our list. And so we don't want to duplicate measures. So we've had to go through those two lists and make comparisons to ensure that we're adding in anything new that we did not have previously. Next slide. So as part of preparing for the tentatively selected plan milestone, we'll continue to have additional meetings with the public and agencies, continue to develop the future without project condition. We're going to be taking those measures, and just so you know, as an example for a measure, it's really one individual feature. So that would be like a levee setback or vegetating a floodplain. Those are individual features. Once we go through a screening of those measures, and we use specific criteria for that screening, some of those criteria are the study objectives, the things that we're trying to achieve to solve whatever issues or problems we've identified, but while avoiding the study constraints, things that we cannot do under the study. We also have planning and guidance criteria that's established, and some of these include acceptability, efficiency, effectiveness, and completeness. So these are just a few of the criteria that we use to screen out some of those measures and to get to a smaller subset. And while we're going through that process, we're also going to be moving measures or alternatives into specific categories that we've talked about previously. So some of those categories are whether or not it would move to a spinoff study. So the full evaluation of that, if it's identified for a spinoff, wouldn't occur under the LMR comp study. We would do an initial scoping for something identified as a spinoff, and then we would recommend that that continue outside of LMR comp, either under an existing authority or under a new authority. Another category that we'll be moving measures to is a programmatic category, where we're looking more long-term, like Anne mentioned previously, that a more comprehensive type of evaluation. We would do some NEPA for programmatic, but we wouldn't do a full NEPA analysis on that. That would continue at some point in the future. And then lastly, we will have actionable features, actionable alternatives and recommendations that we move forward with under the study, where we do a full NEPA analysis, we do a full feasibility level design on that plan, so that we can then move towards a chief's report and recommendation to Congress for those actions. So in evaluating, stepping back to the process, in evaluating our alternatives as part of the identification of the tentatively selected plan, we compare those alternatives and evaluate them by modeling. That can include hydraulics and hydrologic modeling. That can include environmental modeling. That will be the development also of cost estimates for those alternatives. And we will make direct comparisons to those to, again, apply criteria to decide which ones are best solving water resource issues that we've identified and helping us improve in our overall management of the Mississippi River. Next slide. So as part of plan formulation, we've identified an approach to get us through such a large number of measures and alternatives. And so we start off looking system-wide, and we're looking at the water and sediment resource allocation there. So This includes a change in operations to some of our existing Mississippi River and tributary structures or features. And we also are looking at sediment availability and movement throughout the system. So if the system is being taxed by a lot of needs for sediment resource, what does that look like? And and evaluating that to ensure that we have enough of those water and sediment resources to support whatever actions we're recommending. And next we move through what I've gone through previously, evaluating measures and solutions to identify an array of alternatives. So once we've established that water and sediment availability, then we start using that as our baseline to move forward into measures and alternatives and to identify a TSP. The outcomes of that, again, is a multi-purpose, actionable, and programmatic plan, and also tiered or spin-off studies. Next slide. Okay, so that concludes my portion of the briefing. Thank you for your attention today, and stay tuned because our next public update will be in September of 2024. Back to you, Ann.
Hey, thanks so much, Cherie. So we've now reached the end of our presentation. So we are going to open it up in just a minute to comments and questions. We're just going to take a quick 2-minute break. I'm seeing a lot of traffic in the chat, which is great. It looks like some of the team may have already addressed some of the questions, but just give Cherie and I a chance to just take a pause, and we'll come back and go through as many comments and questions that folks have. If you do not plan to stay on, I am going to put another plug in here for the questionnaire. So you can either scan that QR code with your phone, or I'm going to ask one of my teammates online to post the link in the chat, and then you can do it on your computer. Again, it's only 5 questions. So if you're going to hop off, please do that before you leave. Else, just hang tight for just a minute, and we'll be right back online to answer comments and questions. All right. So actually, I'm going to go to my colleague, Mr. Matt Rowe, maybe to help me out here of which, whether to work through those in the chat or if you're seeing hands raised. Matt, if you're talking, you're still on mute. Okay, I think Matt might be having trouble coming off of mute, so I will just dive in. It looks like many of the comments have been answered in the chat, but I'm just going to start at the top. Mr. Williamson, your comment about Bayou Manchac base flow restoration should be considered, and I see that the team has noted that comment will be logged and considered in the study process. Mr. Long from EPA, I understand our environmental lead, Mike Throne, is going to reach out to you about the agency's review periods and when those would occur. So stay tuned for an email from Mr. Mike Throne. In terms of what time the presentation will be uploaded on the Army Corps' website, it should be uploaded today. I would think shortly after this meeting or after the team has a break. So at some point this afternoon, it'll be made available. I see the question of Mr. Dennis. Will the tentatively selected plan include cost estimates to implement various alternatives? Cherie, do you want to speak to what's in the TSP?
Sure. Yes, we do include cost estimates for the TSP. Those are what's called in core terminology as a level 4 cost estimate. And what that means is that it's a little bit more rough order of magnitude cost than what we would have at the recommended plan stage. So we would then, after the agency decision milestone occurs after the TSP, we would go into feasibility level design, and that's where we would develop the cost even further using more data, more detail to refine. But yes, we do have level 4 cost estimates at the tentatively selected plan stage.
Great, thanks, Cherie. Chelsea, are you still using the one gate to the state method and approach? We, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, would like to see it written on official project documents or correspondence that states USACE will consider the comments of the governor appointed state contact and constitutionally independent state agencies as equal. So Ms. Chelsea, yeah, the project and our leadership, we recognize some of the concerns that have been expressed by your agency with regard to our one partner approach. But please rest assured that independent agencies such as yours will receive equal treatment throughout the study process.
Hey, Anna, it's Matt. We have Matt Rhoda with his hand raised.
All right, go ahead.
Hey y'all, hopefully you can hear me. Matt Rhoda with with Healthy Golf down in New Orleans. Thanks for having this meeting. I guess one question I have, or just clarification for the group is, so with this study, recommendations will be put forward in hopefully in 2027, but that does not include any sort of authorization of any sort of projects or changes. That would have to go through new authorization, correct?
Correct. Now, some of the recommendations may have existing authorities already, but yes, for those that do not, they would still require congressional action or authorization.
Great. And I guess one other thing while I'm on, and I think this was reflected by Katie in the chat as well, is something that's been coming up kind of in concert with this is an increased hydrogen production and an increased talking about carbon dioxide waste injection, and that could impact navigation questions and some other issues along the Mississippi River. And I was wondering if that has been mentioned or if that is something that could be added to the list of questions.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm not sure off the top of my head if that's one that's in in our database already from the comments we received. The team can check that while we're answering other questions, but if it's not, it's something that we can certainly add now.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'm seeing I'm seeing from the team that that specific comment has not been mentioned yet. So we will take note of that today.
Before we move on to the questions in the chat, I would like to remind everybody online, please raise your hand and we'll call on you if you have a question or comment. And then I'll pause for a second to allow our call-in participants to press *6 to come off mute if you do have a question or comment, and we'll wait a couple seconds and then we will resume answering comments and questions from the chat. So if you're a call-in participant, press *6 to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I don't know how to raise my hand on the chat. I'm trying to,
okay.
I see it right here. Okay.
Go ahead then.
Yeah. Got it.
Oh, go ahead, Dean.
Okay, yes. So, yes, couple of things. on this about the study of the flooding situation in Pier Part. I mean, we already know why that's happening, and it have to do a lot with the filling of the Chapalaya Basin into the south of the levee, which our comments and proposal address that. But I didn't see our on the description of the comments. I didn't see our proposal described in any way, shape, or form.
So, so thank you, Dean, for joining today. We did not list every comment today. We did try to summarize, and I do know that the team included different summaries from the Atchafalaya Basin. If you felt that your comment was not reflected in the presentation, I think you will find that it's going to be in the public scoping report itself, which will have every comment that came in. But the team did, their goal was to summarize and synthesize across the 200 individual comments that we received. So if it didn't jump out to you specifically in the presentation, it will be in the public scoping report itself. And regarding your note about the flooding in Pierre Part, you know, I hear what you're saying. Our goal today was not to necessarily kind of justify or explain any of the public's comments, right? But simply to share what some of the comments were. So appreciate you though that you were sharing that your perspective on that particular comment as well.
Yeah, I'm very glad to see that in there, because this is going to be addressed, and we will be presenting on future comments, you know, why the reasons are, and maybe when we meet next time, next quarterly meeting, we can talk about that. You have the time for that.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and hold for just a moment for any of our call-in participants to take themselves off mute. *6 to unmute yourself. So we'll just hold the line for just a moment to see if any of our call-in participants have a question or comment. All right, hearing none. We do have a request for comment from Don, so please go ahead and unmute yourself and please address us with your question or comment.
Yeah, I believe that's Mr. Don Segrera. So Don, if you want to come off of mute and share your comment.
No comment at this time, thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Hold on.
So I am seeing a good bit of traffic in the chat, and I may have lost the bubble a bit on which comments have been responded to. So we could start where we
the
last left
comment
off.
from Francis Madison.
Okay, so it says the NOAA maps show large portions of NOLA underwater in 20 to 25 years. Does the Corps take this dire modeling into consideration, or is New Orleans already written off? And is this about shoring up the upriver to be able to accommodate the petrochemical plants currently located in Cancer Alley? I think any existing data or modeling information that's out there in the study area will certainly be considered by the project team as part of our effort to gather, you know, existing data and information. So certainly, you know, any modeling out there, again, that's relevant to the study area is being considered. And again, I think in terms of the scope of the study, we've talked through the 6-7 mission areas today that the study will focus on. And as we work our way through all of the public comments received and work towards the tentatively selected plan, we will better refine that scope and share that in a future update. Seeing the next comment, Ms. Monica Mancuso. The presentation was comprehensive. I may have missed whether you are engaging coastal agencies as the culmination recipients of multiple upriver decisions. Yes, so we are engaging with all state, federal agencies within the study area, as well as other interested stakeholders and the public, right? So all who are either going to be affected by or have interest in the study are certainly being engaged a part of this process. Dr. Reed, what are the screening criteria for the measures that Cherie mentioned? Cherie, you want to take that one, or you or another colleague on the line?
Sure. Yeah, so I quickly walk through I'm not sure which ones, Denise, you were asking about specifically, but I walked through the objectives for the study, which basically outline what we're trying to achieve. They usually have a timeline associated with them. They're measurable. So we have metrics to identify whether or not we're successful with that. There are constraints or things that we just absolutely can't do in the study. And I walk through the planning and guidance criteria, the P&G criteria, we call it, of effectiveness, efficiency, acceptability, and completeness. And those all have different definitions. Effectiveness really is just how effective is that alternative at accomplishing or solving whatever problem we're trying to solve. Efficiency comes into cost, like is there a better or cheaper way to do this than another alternative? Completeness is if that particular alternative is dependent on someone else doing something for us to realize the full benefits of implementation of that alternative, or is it fully complete in itself, and that once it's constructed, it will accomplish what it's intended to. And acceptability is just overall acceptability then it has lots of different criteria. There's technical criteria, economic, social, legal, etc., as far as whether or not that particular alternative is acceptable. I don't know if that answered your question, Denise, but those are the ones that I quickly went through for the criteria. There are others. That was just an example of some of the criteria that we use to screen.
Perhaps as we're working through those in the chat, if you have a follow-on question and you want to raise your hand and come off of mute to elaborate, you can do that, or feel free to post a follow-up in the chat. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one I see. Was there mention of the Grand Prairie Irrigation Project or Bayou Metro Irrigation Project? Both are agricultural water use projects that are aimed at alleviating groundwater depletion in critical groundwater areas. So I understand that the Grand Prairie and Bayou Metro are both active projects in the Memphis district, kind of outside the scope of this study. But was there any, if you have a specific recommendation or comment regarding those, just let us know and we can certainly consider that. Matt, before I keep working through the chat, are there any hands up?
Right now, we do not have any hands up. I will recommend we pause for just a moment
Okay.
for our call-in participants. It's *6 to unmute yourself. So if you're on the phone and not going through the WebEx app, just press *6 to unmute yourself. And we will hold the line for about 5 seconds. Okay, not hearing anybody come off mute from the call-in numbers. We'll resume to answering questions in the chat. The question from Katie Miner is next.
Great. Okay. I'm wondering if there are any considerations or models about the energy transition or the effects of the proposed CCS and hydrogen projects on our water systems. I'll admit I have to phone a friend on this one, either Cherie or our lead modeler, Caitlin Costanza. Are one of you prepared to answer this question today, or is this something we need to come back to?
I think we'll need to come back to this one, Ann. I'm not really familiar with the hydrogen project. I'm not sure what CCS is either.
Capture and sequestration.
Okay.
One of the other terms that's kind of being bandied about right now is coastal blue carbon. It's something else to kind of look into.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's Billy at DOTD interjecting.
Oh, thanks, Billy.
Yeah, we can check the measures list that we have, Billy, and see. I don't know if this one's similar to the one that we heard previously, but we can add that to the list if it's not in there and look into it further, or we can also follow up with you for a phone call to get more information.
To be clear, it wasn't my initial question. I was just kind of clearing up some of the nomenclature.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, understood.
Okay.
The next question we have is from Thomas van Buursel about the water supply.
Okay, I see that. Please note that your water supply section does not include potential interest to water diversions to Texas and others, and those should be addressed since there is no compacts to date. So all the information we presented today was based off of the public comments that we received during our public scoping period, right? So if there was, so if we receive another comment on that specific topic, we can certainly consider it. But that is not something that we received during our public scoping period.
And I do believe that this comment came up at the charrettes. So we
Okay.
have it in our measures list.
Thanks, Cherie, for clarifying that. So yeah, and and for those who may not be familiar, charrettes was kind of an early workshop we had with some of our state and federal partners. Matt Rhoda, is tribal consultation happening with the Houma Nation? While they are not federally recognized, this consultation is vital to this project. Ms. Pam Lieb from the Memphis district is our tribal liaison. Pam, do you want to come off of mute and respond to this comment?
Sure. At this point, I don't think we have included the Houma, but we will be happy to. If you could just send me your contact information, I can get in touch with you and we can get you included.
Yeah, the best way I think for that, I'll put the email in the chat. If you want to send an email to LMR Comp, we can then connect you with Pam and make sure that coordination happens.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat for the moment. We will give another pause for any of our call-in participants to press *6 and come off mute. If any of our WebEx participants would like to raise their hand to come off mute and ask a question or provide us with comment, please do so now. I will hold the line just a moment for any of our call-in participants. All right, hearing none and seeing no hands raised, Ann?
Yeah, we'll just give it another minute to see if anybody else has a comment in the chat. And again, I'll put a plug in since we have a brief pause in the questions to please fill out our questionnaire before you sign off today. We will leave it open all day, but I know what it's like to run from one meeting to the next. So if you could fill out that short questionnaire before you move on to something else today, we would greatly appreciate it. All right, I'm seeing another chat come in Was there anything about industrial water usage during the saltwater intrusion? Are you referring to the saltwater intrusion event that happened, or is this about the scope of the study? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Hi, good morning. This was about the most recent intrusion on last year.
Okay. I can't comment on the previous event, at least not right now. This is something that we can go back to and see if there's additional information that can be provided on that. But I can't necessarily speak to anything outside of the scope of the study right now. But if there's another teammate on who happened to work this, who has an answer readily available, certainly we can share it.
Yeah, I agree, Ann, but this is something that is included in our measures, like the salt wedge migrating upriver and impacting water supply is currently a measure. And so whether it continues under LMR comp or as a separate effort, this is a priority for the Corps, by the way, for the New Orleans district. So that consideration, if it does have impacts, would definitely be included in that analysis. I can't speak to what was done though this past fall or this past season when we went through that scenario.
Anybody want to make a comment, come off of mute, or raise your hand? Not seeing anything more in the chat. I trust if there's any follow-up questions that folks have, you're welcome to shoot us an email at that lmrcomp@usace email address. But we'll stay on another minute to see if any more questions come in. Matt, let me just do one last check. Any hands up?
No hands up right now. Not seeing anybody come off mute either. So I believe that concludes the meeting for today. And if you could leave that, there you go, that slide up. We'll keep the meeting open for a few more minutes. But thank you for joining us today, and we will be doing this again tonight at 6 p.m. Same call-in information. So if you would like more information about the study, there's the website, email address, send us your comments or questions. We will stay on the line for just a few more minutes to monitor the chat for any questions, but thank you so much for joining us today.